This time on the Brothers Mysterium.
But when she talks about it, it's so powerful, and it really does just give you the chills. So how could I not believe?
That I think is almost like a negative aspect of it. Saying that this thing packs a greater punch because it comes from something that you deem to be a mystical source.
She said that the person I would end up with would be a Libra, would be a little bit younger. And she said, I don't know why, but I'm seeing a very big J.
If you believe in psychics and these readings, does that mean that you don't believe in free will?
What I did hear him say was, pray for your brother. He is deathly ill.
My brother and I have always been intrigued by the unexplainable. Like many, we're fascinated with stories of the supernatural, fringe science, and modern-day mysteries.
Though we've seen no first-hand proof of its existence, our minds remain open to the possibility.
Unsatisfied with the so-called evidence on television and the internet, we are choosing to take matters into our own hands and conduct our own interviews and research.
Now we're on a quest to speak with as many people as we can and hear the stories of these events from those who have lived them.
No Hollywood effects or exaggerations, and no hidden agenda. We invite you to listen and decide what and who you believe.
We are the Brothers Mysterium.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of The Brothers Mysterium. We are The Brothers Mysterium, Tommy and Eric.
Heyo.
And if you appreciate the product, you enjoy the show, the podcast we've been putting out, we ask you to do a small favor for us. It's a little thing that makes a big difference. If you could rate and review the show on your podcast provider, we would love it. So do that now. Seriously, please do it right now. Okay. Well, now on to another installment of the Brothers Mysterium. If you recall, last time we were discussing psychic senses. Everyday people who have strange experiences, deja vu, precognitive dreams, ESP, and what it could all mean. Well, in today's episode, we're going to take it to another level. Out of the everyday, we're going to share stories with people who sat down and had their futures forecasted for them by professional psychics. Meet our first guest.
My name is Caitlin, and I'm from Long Island, and I'm 28 years old.
And unlike the guests from part 1 of this 2-part series, she doesn't claim to have ESP or any precognitive abilities. However, she has sought the guidance of those who do claim to have these powers, or at least stumbled upon one when there wasn't much else going on.
I went to a psychic in 2006. I was bored and looked online for free things to do that I thought were interesting.
Even though the circumstances that led up to Caitlin's visit with the psychic seem a little more casual than most, she definitely wasn't closed-minded going into the experience.
I do believe that people have ESP capabilities, but I think that typically I like to explain it as tuning a radio. I think a lot of people expect somebody to just be able to give you the lotto numbers or tell you an exact specific piece of information, but I think it depends on the person, the psychic, and who they're reading, and the day and the time, and how well-tuned their skills are to begin with. In terms of doubting, it's really just, it has depended on the psychic. I always try and keep an open mind about it.
Okay. So getting back to Caitlin's story, it's 2006.
Yeah, I was just looking for fun things to do.
She's a senior in high school.
So I was 18 at the time.
And she finds her way into this psychic's parlor.
Her name was Karen. I don't know her last name, and I've lost her phone number, so I haven't been back there for a couple of years, unfortunately.
Caitlin didn't get too specific about what went on during this first reading, but Karen, the psychic, definitely impressed her.
I've never had anybody before that convince me that they really truly had psychic capabilities.
Intrigued, Caitlin returns to Karen for more readings.
I believe the second time I went to her, she had made a comment about there could be a legal matter that you could avoid easily, whether it's drinking underage or, a speeding ticket or something along those lines, something that you could just avoid. And the following week, I actually for the first time I ever got my first ticket, but it was just a parking ticket. But I remember that just blew my mind. It was just like a week right after. And something actually that has really thrown me recently, because what I usually tell everybody to do is when you go to a psychic, write everything down, because a lot of things aren't going to make sense in the moment, but they will make sense down the line. And it has certainly proven to be weird in those regards. I found a journal from a long time ago, well, from about 2006 or 7, when I was going to her around then. And she said that the person I would end up with would be a Libra, would be a little bit younger. And she said, I don't know why, but I'm seeing a very big J. And so I had written on the paper, very like big J, just to kind of get that in my mind. And the person I'm dating now, who I've been dating for over 3 years, is a Libra, and he's a little bit younger than me, and his name is J. So I think that is very bizarre.
Though Caitlin found these psychic predictions to be shockingly accurate, she still makes sure to keep herself grounded and not get carried away with this type of divination.
I look at all this as fascinating for sure, but I look at it more as a spiritual guide rather than an end-all be-all answer to everything, because it is like tuning a radio after all in my mind. So, I mean, I do believe that some people have it. Of course, they're fakes, but I believe this woman, Karen, did have it. And I think she was in tune. I think that's the reason why I definitely believed in what she was saying, and I took it as an authentic perception of what she could see. So I'm not sure. You know, I'll never know the full answer. Maybe it was all coincidence, but it certainly interested me.
That was a cool one.
Yeah.
Started out, I was like, a parking ticket, not that big a deal.
Right, because that could have gone either way. It said there's a legal trouble that you could easily avoid. Right. So if she had avoided it, she wouldn't really have possibly known about it. Or she could have had an experience where she said, oh, that was a close one. Or what did happen, she got a ticket.
Exactly. She did have a good tip, which was write everything down so you remember it. We always like to give out tips to listeners.
Right. Bert records, but you can always write stuff down.
That's true. And a great thing about that was she wrote down 3 main traits. Libra, okay. Younger, okay. But the J name, and at that point, now she's gone 3 for 3. They've dated for 3 years. They're in a really solid relationship. So that impresses me. A random thing I just thought of while she was talking about that was that the main 3 things that people go to psychics for are to find out about their career and money situation coming up, what their wealth will be like, to find out about their health. Will they live a long life? Will they be happy? Will they have health problems? Or love. So it's interesting that her, Caitlin's best reading was about her love life, and it has since come true.
The fact that the guy's name actually is Jay, to me, that was impressive. If it was just like James or Jerry, I think I would have been like, eh.
Yeah, less cool. And it's like, one of my major things was people say that, kind of like in the movie The Matrix, real psychics know everything that's going to happen.
I'd ask you to sit down, but you're not going to anyway. And don't worry about the vase.
What vase?
That vase.
I'm sorry.
I said don't worry about it.
How did you know?
Oh, what's really going to bake your noodle later on is, would you still have broken it if I hadn't said anything?
To me, sometimes I wonder if people don't go to psychics, and then the psychic says, you're going to marry a guy who's a Libra, who's younger, and who has a J in his name, and then the person will walk away, and they'll be like, I really like this guy. What's your name? Bill. Nope, you're out.
Get the hell out of here, Bill.
Will they change their behavior because they're now thinking he's not the one for me, he's not the one for me? But she said, she doesn't take it as an end-all and be-all. She doesn't follow it that strictly. Plus, I feel like a Libra, younger, J, it's a lot of criteria that kind of narrows down the whole dating pool.
Yeah, usually it's like blonde or brunette, not even.
Yeah. So that was an impressive reading. I mean,
and she has a pretty healthy attitude about it. The fact that she said she doesn't hinge any major life decisions on it. She kind of just sees it as like a spiritual guidance, or, she takes it with a grain of salt, pretty much,
Exactly. But whoever the mysterious Karen,
yeah.
whoever she was, she did nail the boyfriend, so that was cool.
Karen, if you're out there, get in touch with us.
And hopefully you already know we're reaching out to you.
That's right.
The brothers. Mysterium.
I saw my first psychic when I was 24.
You're listening to Katie.
And I'm originally a Jersey girl, but I currently live in New York, New York.
And, as she said, she started seeing psychics when she was 24, about 6 years ago.
Oh, I'm almost 30. Oh, that's a little scary.
Just like every other typical 24-year-old, Katie was unsure about her future and in need of some direction.
At this point in time, I called myself 24 and unsure. I really didn't know what was going to happen with my life. I had been doing the same job for a couple of years. It wasn't what I wanted to do. I didn't exactly want to get stuck in it, but I also didn't know what I wanted to do or where I wanted to go. And I was just so lost, and I was seeking a little bit of guidance. So I decided to see a psychic. I did a lot of research to try to find someone that I didn't think was a scam, so I scoured all of the Yelp reviews, or at the time it was City Search because it was so long ago. Anyway, I finally decided to see this psychic called Stephen Robinson, and I don't know what the hell got into me because I paid $300 to see this guy. Literally, I was making like $28,000 a year, and I paid $300 to see him. Really, I was looking for answers though, and you know, I look at it this way: I would have spent like $100 on a shrink session, and I could have gone only like 3 times. Like, this was at least a little bit more fun.
So, with a little bit of research and some convincing reasoning, Katie was on her way to a psychic reading, and, with any luck, the resolution she'd been hoping to find. When she meets psychic Stephen Robinson, she finds him to be...
What do I say about him?
Well, let's just say he may not have been what she was expecting.
He was a little bit quirky. He asked me to bring a list of questions with me and maybe some pictures or something to touch. And from what I remember, he started off by touching my cell phone, which I thought was a little bit weird.
Sorry, I missed that.
He read through my questions, shook his head, all of that. And then after that, he just started talking. And he first started saying that there was some spirit, not spirit, but someone watching over me. And he kept asking me questions like, do you know this person that does this or does this? And I'm like, no, not really, no. And then eventually, when he figured out, who I was, I guess he was better able to tailor my answers. I'm not exactly sure. What I could say is some of the things he said was a little bit unbelievable, and some of it was like, what? Did he really just say that? And some of it was all like, this guy is so off, this guy is so whack. And then, I was, the whole time I'm flip-flopping, do I believe him? Do I not believe him? Do I believe him? Do I not believe him? And at the end of the day, I ended up believing him because there was some pretty crazy stuff that he said and that happened.
At some point during the reading, Stephen Robinson takes a look at some of the photographs that Katie brought along with her.
I brought a picture of my mom and my aunt.
Now, it's important to mention that Katie has a twin sister. And it's also important to mention that the psychic is well aware of this as he scrutinizes the photograph of Katie's mother and aunt. However, his knowledge of Katie being a twin isn't the result of any otherworldly insight. She informed Mr. Robinson of this before the reading.
So he goes, it looks like your mom had some sort of C-section. And I was like, what's going through my head is, I'm a twin, duh. This guy is not a rocket scientist. He's just, listening to what I say. Anyway, so it was making me really doubt him. But he said one thing after that, and he goes, yeah, your mom had a C-section. That was the cause of all of her health issues. Anyway, I go home, and my mom is psychic. She really thinks that she's psychic, and there are times where I really think she is too. I mean, just crazy stuff happens, but I'll get to that a little bit later. Anyway, my mother I start telling her about the psychic, and she goes, yeah, what did he say about me? I was like, oh, this guy, like, I don't know if I believe him. He said this. Let's see, he saw your picture and he knew I was a twin and said she had a C-section. And word for word, like, my mother said, I know, that's the cause of all of my health problems. Like, I didn't even get to say that part of the story, and that just came out of her mouth. And then he had said something about my father while I was there too. He kept saying, like, yeah, your dad's pretty healthy. He's gonna have knee problems though, and he's gonna drive a little car, which just sounded like the weirdest, strangest things to ever say. But like, I get home and my dad's like, my knees are clicking, and I'm like, what did you just say? And he's like, my knees are clicking. And then like, we'd be driving on the road and he would be like, look at that car, Kate. It's like that little car. Isn't that so cool? So I'm wondering if my dad will ever buy a little car. If he does, then I really know that this psychic is for real. But there are other things that he said, like when you ask him about love or relationships, and I almost feel like you try to conform to it because he gives you hope. He tells you some great things that's going to happen. I think he told me I'm going to write a book and that it was going to be on TV. And at first he was like, maybe I should be a news anchor. And then he was like, no, it's going to be something more casual. I actually like see you on a couch. And I always had that in the back of my head. And then I'm still 24 and unsure. And out of nowhere, I applied to this silly reality TV show.
Why am I single?
I'm a control freak. Haven't met the right person.
I was a late bloomer.
I'm picky.
Misunderstood.
This week, I'm helping Rich and Katie.
As far as boyfriends go, I've only had one, and it lasted probably 3 months. I tried a date, but it never really works out for me. And I ended up being on it, and I was being interviewed on couches and stuff. So I don't know if he morphed what was about to happen to me. What am I trying to say? I don't know if he put things in my head that normally like I wouldn't have even thought about and just kind of gave me hope, or if he was really able to predict the future. Basically, I went to a psychic to find hope and answers. And I've got to say, at the end of the day, what I did find was hope. What he told me was extremely positive. He made me feel a little bit better about where my life was. He was able to put into terms things that I wasn't. I described myself as stuck. And he's like, Katie, you're not stuck. It's like, you're moving uphill. It's a high climb. It's a little hard, but you're not stuck.
My first thought is, if her mother is a psychic, why the hell did she pay $300 to go see a psychic?
A great point.
And that's expensive. Like even the mediums we've come across who are on the higher end don't even get that high.
Yeah, and she said she believed him. She said Steve Robinson had a lot of misses and a lot of things she didn't believe. And then he hit a few things like small cars, the clicking knees, the mom's health problems. But I feel like we were even just saying how you only remember what they got right usually. It sounded like he was more wrong than right. So I don't know why she believed him, but she did say two things that stuck out in my mind. One was she admitted maybe she is trying to conform to what he said to make it true, which is what I was saying before about you trying to date somebody who's a Libra who's younger with a J name. She admitted like maybe she was trying to do that. And the other
that's
thing,
honesty. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's honest. That's cool. I mean, some of it is vague. Like you'll write a book someday, which then maybe she'll do it just because she's like, now it's in her mind.
Yeah, self-fulfilling prophecy.
Planted the seed. But the other big thing for me was she says, you know what, I could have paid and just went to therapy and whatever, and it wouldn't have been as fun or as exciting. But then at the end, she comes back and it was a therapy session where she says, I needed hope. And when I left, I had hope. I did feel better. I wasn't, I had more confidence in where I was going in life. I wasn't stuck anymore and undecided. So basically, my takeaway from that is she didn't really leave knowing anything more about the future, what was going to happen, but she just kind of got some confidence, some guidance, some direction. So it was pretty much a therapy session in disguise as a psychic reading.
So even if this guy was completely full of it at least had the placebo effect, you're saying?
Right. It's like she went in for hope and she left with hope, but like she probably could have sat down and had a heart to heart with a friend or anybody and they could have given her the same thing.
And she may not have gotten the same amount of forward momentum out of it.
Right. Another cool thing that she just quickly touched on, but I wasn't thinking of it and we haven't mentioned it yet, is the various ways that psychics operate, such as palm readings, tarot cards. Like there's a lot of different vehicles that they use.
Touching your phone.
Some people do like tea leaves, where they'll look at where the tea leaves are.
Scrying.
When
you look into a pool of water.
Yes, or they also use that for crystal ball as well.
Right.
Which her mother had that interesting story.
So getting back to my mother, I do feel like my mother's psychic, and she's always had these psychic abilities. Her story is kind of interesting, and, it kind of creeps me out a little bit. Her friends were all into, like, this spiritual world and, like, mysticism and all of that type stuff. And she tells this story that she was hanging out with them, and she was just kind of, like, staring. Like, one of them, they had a crystal ball. And
Katie brings up her mother's psychic experience. This took place with the use of a crystal ball called scrying. Now, it's a secondhand story, but we asked Katie to ask her mother if she would submit this story for us. So she did so in writing, and reading it for us is actress Kelly Walton.
I used to be involved with a group who met once a month. One woman, Elizabeth, was a psychic who worked with the Neptune Police Department. The others were psychics, astrologers, and card readers like myself. While the others were talking amongst themselves, I was gazing into Elizabeth's crystal ball. I never used one before, and quite honestly, didn't believe in them. As I looked into the ball, it became very cloudy and looked like a storm was brewing, just like the Wizard of Oz. All of a sudden, a picture of my father appeared, sitting at our kitchen table in a white t-shirt, like he always wears, and he was holding a mug of coffee. It looked like I was watching a TV screen. Just as fast, the scene changed. Then I saw what looked like a pirate's chest with a skeleton laying next to it. I was astounded. I asked Elizabeth what it meant. She said to be aware of my surroundings within the next 2 weeks, that it was a warning. 2 weeks later, my mother called me and asked me to come upstairs because my dad was not feeling well and wouldn't go to the hospital. I walked in and I saw my dad sitting at the kitchen table, just like he did in the crystal ball. I said, "Dad, get your shoes on, we're going to the hospital." Just as we walked through the hospital doors, my father had a massive heart attack. If we got there moments later, he would have died. That image in the crystal ball saved my dad's life.
So yeah, a lot of different ways that psychics can operate and find out the truth, if you believe they can.
Right.
The Brothers.
Mysterium. I've always been really intrigued by the idea of psychics and the supernatural in general. But I definitely think that I'm a product, of my environment.
Our next guest is from upstate New York.
My name is Ashley. I'm 30 years old.
And for her, stories of the supernatural and the more mystical aspects of the world have always just been a part of life.
My mom is very spiritual. And so I was raised, in that kind of environment. And, she told me lots of stories about her experiences, with such things. The first house that I ever lived in was apparently extremely haunted. But we moved when I was only 2, so I really have no memories, of that house. Just stories, from my mom. I grew up listening to my mom's stories of that house and stories of different psychics that she had been to, some before I was even born. She told me one psychic actually told her that she was pregnant with me and that I'd be a girl. She also predicted that I'd be an achiever, very smart and successful. I was always, straight A student. I was a first generation in my family to attend college. My mother, she went to this woman a number of times through the 80s and the 90s, and I remember her describing the woman as very old. They called her Mrs. Wiltsey. She lived in a trailer a little bit south of Albany, and my mother said that it smelled so bad, like cat pee, in the trailer, so it was really hard to sit through a reading, but the psychic was so good that, she just sucked it up.
Even though Ashley grew up with the stories of these experiences embedded in her childhood, she still finds herself questioning the phenomena at times.
Most go in, with some doubt. I'm guilty of that. There's always that thought lingering in my head, like, I think it's the kind of science in me. The what if.
Putting the stories of Miss Wiltsey and her smelly trailer aside, there is one happening in particular that Ashley's mother disclosed to her that tends to put her skepticism to rest. Ashley's mother was adopted and never knew anything of her birth mother. Back in the mid-90s, a coworker who claimed to have psychic abilities approached Ashley's mom and went into detail about her biological family. After performing some intense research into her roots for the first time, Ashley's mother discovered the coworker's information to be accurate, and in the end, he helped provide her with some much-needed explanations regarding her origins.
When she talks about it, it's so powerful, and it really does just give you the chills. So how could I not believe? When I first decided to go to a psychic, it was just kind of for answers and for guidance. It wasn't to connect with anybody on the other side.
Ashley has been to several psychics in her life and has had a variety of experiences. So let's start with her first reading.
This psychic's name was Lynn. I was in a relationship, that pretty much at the time I knew it wasn't going, where I wanted it to. But I really wanted to make it work, really desperately. And I'll never forget her saying to me, "You can't force what's never been there." And that thought, really lingered in my head for the next month until, that relationship eventually ended. And that was my third failed relationship in the matter of, 3 years. And when I turned 25, I really hit a crossroads. I wasn't happy in my personal life. I wasn't happy in my professional life. And I think I just started looking for answers kind of in the wrong places.
While visiting a friend in New York City, Ashley goes to see her second psychic.
I was just in a horrible place in my head. And, I don't even know what I was thinking at the time, but, I feel that experience, I think my vulnerability was definitely taken advantage of. And I can't even recall a lot of what she told me because it was just so general and, basically a waste of money. I mean, nothing significant that I can remember and nothing, that I recall affecting my life.
Some time goes by and Ashley meets a nice young man named Jeff.
I think we have been dating for about 2 months.
At this point, she decides to get another reading.
I went back to Lynn,
the psychic from her first reading.
So now I'm in a whole new relationship. She went into my past relationship again and, how awful it was and that it was good that it ended and so on and so forth. And then she went on to tell me that my current relationship would end in an engagement and eventually marriage. She mentioned the month of February, as far as specifics go. And that we'd be traveling to a beach.
Cut to a year later. Jeff proposes to Ashley on February 28th of 2012, and the two get married a year later in Cocoa Beach, Florida.
And mind you, I gave this woman, absolutely no info. No names, no questions, nothing. Like, she didn't have anything. Like, all that she would do would she would take like a personal item, like a ring, and just hold it, I think, for the energy. Hello.
Today.
But never asked any personal details, nothing. And I never doubted anything she told me in any reading. For the most part, I kept an open mind. And when she started, being right about things, it only made me more intrigued. I will say, though, that I did not tell Jeff, my husband, about what she said in 2011 because, we had only been together like all of 2 months, and A, I didn't want to scare him, and B, I didn't want him to think I was a nutcase.
So, in 2013, not too long after the wedding,
a couple months after our wedding,
Ashley goes back to Lynn for the third time, making this her fourth reading.
And that time I went to her, she predicted my pregnancy and that I would have a June baby. And sure enough, I got pregnant in September, and I had my daughter in June of 2014. So true and true. That to me, it just is way more than a coincidence. I truly believe, a definite select few, and some better than others, have, precognitive abilities. But there's also the quote unquote psychics who, definitely abuse the power and abuse the title.
Ashley remembers her mother's psychic coworker, the one who approached her mom and willingly gave readings and supplied her with deep personal information at absolutely no cost.
And I think it kind of like proves a point, that it's almost like the people with the real abilities, aren't profiting from it. It's like they don't like that ability, he almost wanted to hide it.
Okay, so after some very successful readings with Lynn, Ashley decided to try someone new, a psychic that was recommended to her by two of her very close friends, which is usually a pretty trustworthy seal of approval, but not in this case.
Unfortunately, I received an awful reading, and it really made me regret, spending the money for the first time, because by now, I had been to Lynn a number of times and, paid her, and, I never had that regret.
This maybe not so psychic's name was Tracy, and Ashley went to see her in 2014.
My first mistake was I didn't really research. I kind of went just off the word of friends, and it just really goes to show how different people's readings and interpretations can be. Afterwards, I did find out, after I had the reading with her, I did some research on her, and I found out that she went to a holistic science school.
A simple Google search for Holistic Science School Psychic provides a list of places that label themselves as institutions for spiritual studies, natural and spiritual science, or metaphysical humanistic sciences, etc. And through the programs offered at these schools, one can become certified or even receive a PhD in everything from psychic mediumship and energy healing to cryptozoology and ufology.
So it was kind of like she was a taught psychic, which to me, just right there is a bunch of bullshit, to put it bluntly. I think it's something you have or you don't. You're born with it, or you're not, and that's it. In the reading, I pretty much knew she was fake right away, because, She asked way too many questions about my personal life. That was the first red flag. The second red flag is that, the reading was supposed to be 60 minutes, which is considered a relatively long reading for psychic. I mean, the ones that I had with Lynn were about 20 minutes. So the second red flag was that she would go off on these random tangents, which had nothing to do with me or anyone I knew. And I really feel like she was trying to kill time because, she didn't know jack shit. And when I went to her, I was in a relatively, recent postpartum period. So I think emotionally I was a bit fragile. And the one thing she did say that just put me into tears, and not because I believed her, but because I was so angry, was she said that me and my husband would not last in our relationship and that it was going to end. And at that point, I really almost lost it. She also went on to tell me that I should not vaccinate my newborn daughter. And, at this point, I was done. And I actually ended the session before it was even over. I did suck it up and pay her, but obviously not for her abilities. I just, I paid her for her time, because everybody has a job to do. And, this is somehow her job and somehow she makes a living doing this. But I think that last experience, that was 2014. So, it was relatively recent. It was about a year and a half ago. I think it's definitely jaded me a bit. So I can't really say if or when I'll go back. But I definitely have, both sides of the spectrum. I've gotten good readings and, unfortunately my last one wasn't a good one. But overall, I do think psychics are real.
First thing that I noticed is it's similar to other stories we've heard, 24 years old, young, kind of unsure, looking for guidance, which also fits in with mediums. You're at a crossroads, you need answers, and it's interesting that people never turn to friends or family. They always seem to turn to the paranormal mediums, psychics, to find that guidance. Like it's.
I don't know if there's something to be said about that. If it's like you're too close to these people, so you don't want it to. Sometimes if you feel too close to somebody, you have a problem you can't go to them with.
Yeah. Or maybe it just holds more weight if it's coming from the great beyond.
That I think is almost like a negative aspect of it. Like saying that this thing packs a greater punch because it comes from something that you deem to be a mystical source. When, as Ashley had said, she had this one psychic where she had a great experience with, and this other one where she literally had to suck it up and just pay the lady to get the hell out of there.
And it sounds to me like at the end, the lady was pushing her own agenda, like, don't vaccinate your baby. Like, that's not a psychic thing. That's more.
No, that's like a autism awareness agenda there.
Yeah. And speaking of that, it was, once again, I always feel bad when people have bad experiences, but it's cool for the show to hear both sides of the coin. So you had some great ones with Lynn, some bad ones with Tracy. And she said, she flat out knew that this woman wasn't legit when she went to the school to sort of become a psychic. And Ashley echoed the way I feel, which is a lot of people say, everyone has the ability to be a medium. Everyone has the ability to be a psychic. We all have the potential. You just need to tap into it. Some of us are just better than others. I don't think that's the case. I think it's kind of like some people can sing, some people just can't. Some people are great at sports, some people aren't. Like, you could take somebody and sit them in front of a piano and they might just suck at piano. Right. They just don't have that gene. So it's like, you can't be trained to become a great artist if you just don't have that artistic ability naturally.
Right. Yeah.
So that's my feeling as far as psychic abilities, mediumship. It's like,
it's a talent.
Right. It's a talent that some people have it, some people don't. And I hate when people are like, we all can do it. It's all there. We all have the potential.
Right. Yeah.
I disagree with that. And as did Ashley. So I was kind of glad to hear her say that. Another cool thing is psychometry came up again, which is holding an object, whether it's a cell phone, a ring, or something like that. It's also known as token object reading or psychoscopy, and that works both for predicting the future and for speaking to those that have passed. And as far as Ashley's readings with Lynn that she enjoyed and went well, once again, a lot of interesting, cool hits that are sort of hard to dismiss. You're going to get married. It's going to be in February. That was true. The beach was involved, and, she got engaged in Key West, and then they had the wedding on the island. And then the thing about in June, you'll have a baby. And then in June, she had a baby. So a lot of accuracy coming from Lynn.
Yeah, with those kind of predictions that she made that came true. I mean, you can't argue that one way or the other.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess she could say there's 12 months and whatever, but to predict she's having a baby, and she said Lynn doesn't ask a lot of questions and stuff. So it's not like she could have said, are you going to have a kid? Are you planning on a kid? Whatever. And another pattern that I've mentioned a few times on the show, which is just interesting. Ashley said that her mother was very spiritual, raised her in it. Katie earlier mentioned that her mother, claimed to have psychic abilities. And as I've said in the Bird follow-up episode, once again, it's just a pattern that women, especially mothers, always seem to be the ones with the supernatural element to their lives. It's never really a father or a male figure, which I don't know what it means, but I just like to point out these patterns we discover on our Mysterium investigations.
For sure.
As far as classical psychics are concerned, I've only ever been to a palm reader in Chicago.
The story you're about to hear is from Chris, a 35-year-old living in San Diego. He submitted this experience in writing, so reading it for us is actor Stephen Hoffner.
I was with some friends on a bender of a weekend. Woo! And we drunkenly decided to step into one of the neon-lit storefronts on a residential side street in the Russian Division District. The palm reader knew I was planning to move to the city, but we also sat in a waiting area for at least half an hour before each of us were seen. I'm convinced there were mics in the lobby. I was pretty far in the bag, so I'm sure any suggestive questions on the ladies' end were easy tells, as I was all about drunken honesty. The real experience I had was far more eerie and concerned not a dime store psychic, but Catholic priest. His name is Father Mike. That is the only name that I know him by. He's an Irish priest, late 70s. He's a small man, frail, gentle, and extremely nice. I had met and prayed with him one time before the experience I'm about to speak of. In my late 20s, I was pretty lost. I'd come off about 10 years of clubbing and partying, a hedonistic lifestyle that ended with a relationship with a woman that was very emotionally disturbed and actually was pretty emotionally and physically abusive. My career had stalled. I was very overweight and a functioning alcoholic. I was searching for answers. My mother suggested I pray with this priest, and so I went to the house of the lady who was the leader of my mom's Bible study, where Father Mike was staying for the week. He laid hands on me and began to tell me things about myself.
Yes, my child. Do you have anything to declare in your sin?
It was enlightening, but it wasn't anything that any lost young man, wouldn't find revelatory. Too much internet porn, not enough Jesus. God loves me for who I am, trust in him, etc. The next time when I met Father Mike was after a very serious family crisis. Our family had been rocked by a major divorce. My sister had just gotten her marriage legally dissolved. I won't air, all our family's dirty laundry, but it was a messy divorce. And unfortunately, this divorce led my family to pick sides, and it divided us horribly. For a good year and a half, we were broken, angry, and completely at odds with one another. My mother said that Father Mike was in town and that we should all go to a healing mass that he was leading. I wasn't into it, but for the sake of everyone else and my wife, we both agreed to attend. The Mass was held in a smaller chapel off of the main church of my parents' parish. It was attended exclusively by my mother's Bible study women. And as the Mass went on, I was immediately put ill at ease because the women began speaking in tongues, which I consider to be kind of an ostentatious and semi-fake form of showy prayer. Not unlike those clips of mega churches where you see the larger-than-life pastor causing people to fall over in ecstasy with a flick of a hand. Not to mention that my wife, although a devout Christian, is a Protestant and considers this type of prayer very Catholic and kind of weird. So after the Mass was said, we were all invited up as a family to pray with Father Mike. We all went up together and were flanked by two women in the Bible study who did not stand in our circle, but remained directly outside, arms extended in kind of a ambient, protective prayer gesture. Father Mike laid hands on us one by one. I didn't hear what he said to my mother or my father. When he laid hands on my sister, I heard him say, "Don't worry, God sees you as you want to be seen." This caused my sister to sob uncontrollably, as it seemed to be the balm that her soul needed. He then laid hands on me. He said a lot of things about how I'm calling out to Jesus and in the wilderness and asking for his help. And then I'm, searching for him and can't seem to find him. This was accurate, as I have rolling bouts of agnosticism, but again, nothing that, really blew my mind. Then he laid hands on my wife. I listened with bated breath because I wanted to know if he could break into her psyche. She has a strong faith, but does not give power to men of the cloth. She believes that all of us have a direct line to God and that we do not, need a man to intercede for us. He said a few things which I didn't hear. He speaks, very low, fast, and with an Irish brogue that is often difficult to make out. What I did hear him say was, "Pray for your brother. He is deathly ill." My heart sank. My wife gave me a wilted look. My wife has two sisters, no brothers. The service concluded. We walked out. My sister seemed to be floating on a cloud, absolved and walking with a hopeful purpose. My wife was just kind of like, "Well, that was nice." An almost visible shrug, hung about her presence. The next morning, we were awoken by an early phone call. The type instantly, the type that, pretends terrible news. My wife's sister's husband, her brother-in-law, was in critical condition at a local hospital. He was very near cardiac arrest due to severe blood anemia and was slipping in and out of consciousness. He'd never been in ill health ever before. It was an extremely tense day as we waited for the news. After several blood transfusions and a surgery, it was determined that he had an internal hemorrhage in his rectum that was bleeding into his body and causing sepsis. He made a full recovery. We were stunned. Never had we encountered something so profound and uncanny. To this day, it still gives us chills thinking about it. I still struggle with my faith, but even if I don't know if I believe in a neat little heaven where, all of us go to have picnics with Jesus, I know that there is something that exists beyond the bounds of human understanding. And some people have a way to tap into a realm that most of us can never imagine.
So, probably the eeriest, well, definitely the eeriest of the psychic stories we heard. First thing I want to touch on is he kind of quickly says the only other experience he had with a psychic was they kind of stopped in at a cheap palm reader just for thrills one drunken night. And as he said, he kind of said we were kind of sitting there shooting the breeze, drunk,
right,
loose lips. And he's like, there might have even been a microphone in the lobby. And I just want to point out that that's very possible. And some of the techniques mediums and psychics have been known to use, the fraudulent ones at least, is miking the lobby or even the bathroom, as well as having people in the lobby milling about who's basically a spy, because what happens is everybody shows up, they're excited and they're talking to each other, whoever they came with or other people. What do you hope to find out? Who are you here to contact? What are you waiting for?
Right. Meanwhile, a guy in the corner is texting the psychic.
Exactly. They're
lady
taking
in a white coat, hoping to get in touch with Uncle Sam.
Right. They're taking notes. They're doing this. They're doing that. So that is plausible. Obviously, that wasn't the main part of his story. That's more about Father Mike. We try not to get too much into religion and or politics or anything like that.
True.
But this was a cool story, I guess, just because he didn't necessarily go to a psychic. He just kind of came upon a psychic.
Yeah, a little more interesting in that way. That this isn't someone who was soliciting themselves as a psychic.
Right. I mean, he did say initially he went to see a priest because he needed guidance, and he was kind of coming off a lot of benders and had some problems and was looking for something. So he met with a priest for the priesthood, not for the psychic abilities. And actually, at the first meeting, there was no psychic reading, quote unquote, given. It was more at this last kind of prayer session when his wife was told, pray for your brother. He's ill. And they're kind of like, oh, that's weird. He's wrong. There is no brother.
Right.
Only the very next morning to be woken up with the brother-in-law, needing blood transfusions and surgeries and stuff. So, as I said, an eerie coincidence, you might think, or is it more? I mean, the guy was in perfect health. He didn't have any issues that they said. So for Father Mike to say that, hours before they get this phone call is definitely, he was dead on with that prediction.
Yeah. I mean, based on the information given, once again, according to the story, it locks up. Can't really argue much of that.
Can't argue much. That's a cool story to end on. And I'm going to boldly say something now. I know that thus far we haven't been able to get a medium on the show, but I would like if we had a psychic on the show at some point to read us, because certain things we can't do. We can't just get a ghost to come and be on the show, but we can find a psychic that's reputable, go to them, and hopefully they'll let us record it and share it. So we will try to do that.
That'd be sweet if we could just get a ghost on the show.
I've been trying that for so long, and none of them ever reply to emails or anything.
If there are any ghosts listening, come on over.
Contact us. One thing I did notice as I was asking people is that, and even in every one of these stories, psychics are much more controversial, and people have much harder opinions on them. Like when I was looking for medium stories, people are like, yeah, you have to be careful, you need medium. But everybody basically said, I didn't want to get scammed. There's so many scam artists. There's so many fakes out there.
Right.
Which I thought was just interesting with mediums. They're a little more like, some mediums are fake, but a lot of them are. And this one, it was, even in every one of these stories, almost somebody mentioned.
Every psychic is suspect. Is how they treat it.
That's true. Because the future is just so wide open, and some people believe what they want. So a lot of people argue. And a great example of that, it comes from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where the character of Dee really does believe in psychics, while her father, Frank, thinks it's all a scam.
And then Psychic John said that he could tell I was under a tremendous amount of stress and that my heart was filled with sorrow. Now, how would he have known that if he wasn't psychic?
I'm not giving you any money for your dumb psychic.
But he says I'm going to have a tremendous windfall of cash.
You're losing your mind. You're being scammed.
Hi, Psychic John. You have an interesting aura.
Don't start with me. Who's going to win the Super Bowl this year? You don't know shit.
Now, one question I ask myself as we listen to these stories and everything is, why even go to a psychic? I understand people say that they're lost, they're confused, they need guidance, but this is how I'm going to make an analogy. I have a friend who loves to spoil everything. He goes online, reads what's going to happen on a show before it does. If you're playing a video game, he goes ahead. I hate it.
Really?
I hate it.
Wait, why does he do that?
I don't know. That's my point. And it's the same thing with
this. He
this.
gets pleasure out of just ruining people's day?
Well, he just wants to know. He needs to know.
But why tell other people?
I don't know. Maybe he thinks that it gives him, maybe he feels like he's a psychic in a way, that he knows something I don't know, and he's going to be the first.
I've noticed this amongst kids when you watch movies with them or like something like that. Like they always like to tell the other kids what happened and announce like, oh, this part's great. Oh, this is when this happens. And it's like, you didn't write the movie. You don't get credit for saying that. Like, what makes you feel good about spoiling it? Is it the fact that it makes it feel like they have knowledge that someone else doesn't?
Yeah, and I mean, some people are just idiots and can't keep it in, but this dude just absolutely loves it. Any show, anything, he knows what's going to happen.
It's rotten.
it's rotten. And for me, it's like, why? Like, for example, if psychics are real and they can predict so much, I wouldn't go to one anyway, even though I just said we want one on the show out of curiosity. But personally, it's like, I don't want to know when I'm going to die. I don't want to know what's going to happen in 10 minutes because for me, it just takes the fun out of life. I don't
Right. Yeah. Your whole life is this. What is it? I'm looking to say.
It's an open slate. For me, like, it's an adventure. I want to live it. Like we said, it's people go for romance relationships. I don't want to know what's going to happen or not going to happen because then it's either going to be depressing or I'll be like, oh, well, now I know. Career and money. I don't want them to say, you're never going to be as famous as you want. You're never going to make a dime. And I don't, I want to have my own destiny in my own hands. I don't want it.
Right. Yeah.
It's like health. I don't want to know about my health because if it's going to get bad, it's going to suck. Like,
right.
I don't, that aspect of it is just, I don't understand why people do it. It's like when you know what's going to happen, it's boring.
Yeah. I mean, if you think of like your life as like the ultimate, I mean, I hate similes and analogies like this because it makes it so pulls it out of reality and you should never. Like I had a friend, we were driving our car one time and he's like, this is like a video game. It's like, no, you stupid ass. Video games are like real life. You shouldn't be making the opposite comparison. But for this case, I will. If you think of your life as a story, it's the ultimate story because it's your story. Why would you want someone to spoil that?
It's true. And along those lines, in a way, part of it is that belief that there are people who have this quote unquote gift. Because as we just said, if you can predict the future, you take the fun of your own life and other people's. And a lot of times it's interesting because people that may have these abilities will keep it quiet. They won't do readings. They won't charge it, as where other people make a huge spectacle. They want money. They want TV shows. They're writing books. And it also plays into then like who really has these abilities, who doesn't. And I always think of an amazing episode of The X-Files, Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose.
Come in. I knew it was you. I know why you're here. You're here because you found that woman's body where I told you it would be. And now you're convinced I have some sort of psychic power.
I won't help you. Please leave.
But you do admit to having this gift.
Oh, I got it all right. The only problem is it's non-returnable.
Mr. Bruckman, you possess an ability that not only has staggering implications upon physics and human consciousness, but it's one which most people, myself included, would be envious of. Yet you seem to treat it with disdain. Mr. Bruckman, I believe in your ability, but not your attitude. I can't stand by and watch people die without doing everything in my, albeit unsupernatural power to interfere with that fate.
So yeah, it comes down to sort of then, we're now opening so many doors. As we said, this covers so many different paranormal topics, ESP, precognitive dreams, psychic abilities. It also then covers like, if you believe in psychics and these readings, does that mean that you don't believe in free will? Like, do you then believe in fate and destiny? And no matter what, I was going to die on this day, no matter what I did, no matter what I changed, that's the day I'm going to die. My ticket's already punched. My future's already written. Or can you then still say, and even in our show, some people have said, like Caitlin was like, yeah, I take it as like a little bit of guidance, but I don't let it deem my life. Where Katie said, like, I started conforming to these things. So it's like,
yeah, that makes me think of like, that definitely brings like fatalism and all that into complete question. But to me, if you're that kind of person who would buy that and thinks that the psychic can sell you your own future, you're probably also the kind of person who says things like, well, everything happens for a reason. Which obviously everything happens for a reason, like, yeah. Or also like, oh, it just wasn't meant to be, as if it's like everything is pre-written. People like to believe that because they don't want it. People don't like the chaos factor in their lives,
right? Knowing
that like everything is completely unknown and at any minute, everything could just go completely haywire.
And maybe it takes the blame on them, where it's like if things get screwed up, you go, oh well, but it's like, well, you had free will, you screwed this up. It's easier just to say the universe didn't want it.
Yeah, exactly.
Which again then makes me think, are people doing these self-fulfilling prophecies because psychic told them you're going to write a book, so now they're trying to write a book, or were they actually going to write a book?
I wonder what the percentage is on people who go to the psychic, feel good, and then just like totally disavow like everything that they said, or just kind of like forget it. Like they get the feel goods and that's it, and then they just kind of go on with their lives. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And another thing that annoys me about psychics sometimes is some people have the ultimate cop out, which is they say like, it's yet to be written. You can still change it, but this is what it is. It's like the many worlds interpretation, which is like, the theory of all these different timelines are written, every decision, you go outside, you turn left instead of right, but then now there's a new dimension where you did go right. And then you found a penny, so you stopped and picked it up, and now you're 3 seconds later, so you weren't hit by a bus. And I feel like a lot of psychics can say, this is going to happen in your future. And then when it doesn't happen, they're like, yeah, you were able to change it, which to me, there's too many variables, so it's just straight up bullshit.
Well, right, because
the ultimate cop-out.
Right, that begs an infinite amount of universes then where, okay, you didn't make choice A, you made choice B, so now you're in world B, but you in choice A then goes on from there and makes choice A or B, so it continually splits forever and ever and ever.
Right, there's so many different timelines that they could say, I saw it, but it must have been a different time, which means they can never be wrong.
Right.
And along the lines of people that can never be wrong, we didn't touch on it yet, but we will right now, is one thing that I've never been a fan of is prophets, such as Nostradamus.
Yes.
Because I feel like his quatrains, which is what he calls his little prophecies, are just so vague that they apply to everything. And whenever there's a national tragedy or a world event or anything, people start posting them. And
people start making them up too.
There are a lot of fake ones. But I feel like they're just so vague and open to interpretation that you can apply them to anything. They're like, 2 brothers will fall and the sky gets dark. So that could be if 2 brothers kill themselves, if 2 brothers are killed,
right?
If 2 buildings fall over, if 2 cities have a problem, you can,
right?
It's just so vague and open that I put no stock in them. But again, it comes down to what we always say, which is like people will find things that they want to believe it, so they'll find the truth in it no matter what.
Right, and this goes back to also then like Bible code and all that kind of stuff, where you can like take texts and do certain like algorithms. I forget how it works, and then you can get words that have similar meaning within a text. And we should look this up actually. I remember somebody else doing a study on this where they did it with like a random book and still got the same results, because you can always tie these words together that you find.
That reminds me of another thing I'm not a fan of, which is numerology, which a lot of people will use.
Oh, what is that called? Oh, never mind. That numerology is numerology. I was thinking something else.
But that's like where it's like, my lucky number is 13. But what that becomes then, it's like, room 31. That's my lucky number, just reversed. Or, I'm 4 p.m. That's got to be good luck because my lucky number is 13 and 3 plus 1 is 4. Or 3 minus 1 is 2. And suddenly my lucky number of 13
1 o'clock is 13.
Right.
Has
now, it's like that one number can become 100 numbers because you're able to constantly
subtract and divide.
You can subtract, divide, add, multiply,
But also what people do in that circumstance is then, you have to consider how many numbers you come in contact with in like just an hour of your day, and how many of those numbers you then throw away.
60 minutes right there.
Right, exactly. And how many of those numbers you then throw away and keep like, oh my goodness, the number 11, make a wish,
Exactly. So a lot of different ways to perceive this, a lot of different ways to predict the future, whether you're a psychic, you're just somebody with abilities, perhaps you're tapped into something with your religion. It's super vague and a weird thing to say, but what are your final thoughts on psychic abilities?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think for now, with the exception of my one experience, and not saying like I'm the exception to the rule where I had that one dream, I would say I'm leaving my mind open about the prophetic dream situation or the clairvoyant dream.
Okay.
Yet to be determined. But I would say for the most part, the psychics who sell you an idea of your own future, I would say I don't subscribe to it. I don't think it's legit.
My all-encompassing attitude as of this moment is this, which is I believe potentially there can be real psychics out there, but somewhat like mediums, there are just so many people out there to make a buck, so many scam artists and fakes that they sort of taint the reputation for everybody. We heard some interesting and convincing things in the experiences shared on today's show, but there's always a small bit of doubt in my mind as to I want to meet somebody as we said, maybe we can get somebody on the show who can like give us that firsthand reading of something. I mean, I'm more inclined to believe in mediums than predicting the future, just because I think the future is just so wide open. There's so many possibilities that like you could probably make a prediction right now and it could potentially come true.
Right.
So I'm kind of babbling, so I guess I'll cut myself off.
Well, I just want to repeat something I said to you actually earlier, is that another reason I'm kind of down on this whole thing is that it never happens like it happens on the TV shows.
What do you want to know?
You can just ask her.
You can ask me. What do you want to know?
She was going to tell me something just before I got up from the table to go to the bathroom. I want to know what it was. What she was going to tell me.
I can tell you what you want. But I've been doing this long enough to know that no matter what I say to you, you're going to be disappointed because it's not going to fix what's broke inside.
Bullshit.
Sorry?
You don't know. You're not f***ing real. I'm going to be disappointed because whatever it is that you're about to tell me is f***ing bullshit.
Walnuts.
What?
Your mother sent your salad back because she asked for no walnuts. She was very polite about it, though. Are you sure you want to know?
Tell me.
But like on the TV shows, they always make super specific claims and that it come true. And I mean, people are like, well, yeah, but that's fiction and it's fantasy. But it's like, if you're saying these people have these powers, then shouldn't it work that way?
Right, exactly.
It's like, oh, what's your power? I can make vague predictions that 50% of the time come true. That's not a power. You know what I mean?
Right. Like one thing a lot of people say too, and it's funny because we were trying to rap and we're still talking.
That's always what happens.
Is like, he predicted I was having a boy, or my grandmother can always predict if it's a boy or a girl. And it's like, oh, that's a 50-50 odds. I don't really count that as them having a psychic ability.
Right. But if you said like, and even with that priest where he was like, oh, you're pray for your brother, he's sick. Like he didn't, if he would have, I would have been much more impressed if he said, her brother-in-law tomorrow is going to have this exact condition. It never happens like that.
Yeah. Although that one I think was more specific than others.
Yeah, that's granted, that's still pretty good.
Yeah. And I agree with you.
It's not, no one ever nails it 100% on the head.
And the one thing that always will probably be the case in a lot of things, it's like sometimes you need to be convinced yourself, which goes back to my Harry Houdini test, as I called it. It's like, if we see a medium, which hopefully we will, I want them to say something that nobody else would know, that I could be like, wow, you have this ability.
Right.
Same thing with like a psychic. Like even if, my best friend said it, a part of me is always like, well, I'm kind of hearing it secondhand from him. Is that exactly how it happened? Unless it's like recorded or something, which there's nothing wrong as we open this season with healthy skepticism. So we'll let you decide who and what you believe. And if you can predict the future, you already know what's coming up on the next episode.
Oh, snap.
Should we not have it on the next episode to see if anybody can predict it correctly?
Okay, sure.
Boom.
That's all the time we've got for this week on World of the Psychic. Until then, this is Peter Venkman saying, see you then. Bye.
Clips from this episode are from The Matrix, released in 1999 and produced by Village Roadshow Pictures and distributed by Warner Bros. And Village Roadshow Entertainment. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, episode 8 from season 6, entitled Charlie's Mom Has Cancer, which originally aired on November 15th, 2012. The X-Files, season 3, episode 4, entitled Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose, from October 13th, 1995. The VH1 reality show, Why Am I Still Single? The clip of the lady talking to the psychic, and he mentions walnuts, is from The Leftovers, Season 2, Episode 9, called 1013, which originally aired on November 29th, 2015. And from 1989's Ghostbusters 2, produced and distributed by Columbia Pictures. Songs from this episode include Pachelbel's Canon in D, and a brief cut from Sir Edward Elgar's Pomp and Circumstance Military Marches, Opus 39. Special thanks to Gwen and Dan Hudson for their voiceover work, and the Nevergrin for performing our theme song. If you want to get in touch with us, you can hit us up at thebrothersmysterium@gmail.com, at Mysterium Bros for Twitter and Instagram, facebook.com/thebrothersmysterium, and of course, thebrothersmysterium.com. We ask that if you like the show, please rate and review us on whichever podcast service you use. And as always, we thank you for listening to us. We'll see you next time.